dragging me off, and then I found myself just kind of coming back in, and I had a kind of a stillness and a kind of spacious nothing where the noise wasn't bothering me, like, you know. And I kind of maybe just get like a little realization of it, and I'd realize it's going on out there, but I'm not grabbing it, you know. And it was nice. It was nice, you know, because I'm very easily distracted, you know. It's very easy for my mind to, you know, start grabbing onto stuff, and you know, a lot of coming back, because I judge it, actually, you know, when I start doing that, if I'm in resentment, or if I'm in, you know, what you call thinking and planning, if I'm in that, I judge it, like I judge myself for it, like, you know, and I just found there, I realized about the judgment. I kind of maybe let the judgment go a little bit in it, and I came back to a lot of, you know, some nice, just kind of whatever it was, clarity, some just clear nothingness, you know. It was nice. It was nice. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing, Connor.
Thanks. It's good to be here.
I just have kind of a philosophical question. No, it's more a technical question about Pemako and other lineages. It might be just theoretical stuff. I mean, the practice side of it is very clear, but they talk about the difference between a pointing out instruction in like Mahamudra and a direct introduction in Dzogchen. Do you know what I mean? Like, and they talk about the 4 empowerments in Dzogchen, which you receive from the teaching, so that you can even begin to practice Ati Yoga or the nature of mind. So I just heard about that lately, and it doesn't in any way correspond with my experience. So I would love to hear your take on that.
So I remember this story that I once read from some book. Actually, it wasn't a book. It was a friend who told me. It was his experience. A few years ago, we had a guest from United States. At the time, we had the center, our own center in Finland, in Tammisaari, in a village called Tammisaari. And I invited an American Lama called Lama Tsering, who was a close student of Dzogchen Rinpoche, the first one had been. I invited him over, and he came, and he told me the story that he had once been recommended, some of his teachers told him to receive some empowerment that some other High Lama was giving. And for some reason, he missed it. He couldn't, there was some problem with traveling over or something like this. So he missed the empowerment that lasted for days. Like it literally lasted for, I don't know, 3-4 days. And so finally, when he came over to the empowerment site, you know, they were already wrapping up the tents, and you know, it was over, the whole thing. And he was like, oh God damn it, I missed, you know, the empowerment, and I couldn't follow the advice of my teacher. And then I think he went and discussed with the High Lama who had just given the empowerment and asked for his advice. And this High Lama told that, you know, go to this other Lama who is somewhere nearby. You take a bus to him or her, I don't remember, it was a man or a woman, and ask for the same empowerment, and he or she will give it to you. You know, no problem. Just take a bus, go and ask for it and receive it. And he went over there. I don't remember which empowerment it was or who these high lamas were, but anyway, high Nyingma lamas of Tibetan Buddhism. So he went over, he respectfully greeted the Lama, told him who he was and what was the story, that he went to the empowerment, but there was some problem with the transportation and so on and so on. And he was then requesting the empowerment from that Lama. And he said that, sure, I'll be happy to give it to you. So let's first have tea and then we will go into it. And they had tea, chatted some about some matters, practice matters, whatever. And Lama Tsering, he was already preparing that, okay, this will take days and days, you know. It took 15 minutes. The Lama gave exactly the same empowerment in 15 minutes, not in 4 days, not even in 1 day, not even 1 hour, but 15 minutes. And so it was, I remember him telling me that it was a big revelation to him about what empowerments are. So I have avoided taking empowerments in Tibetan Buddhism because I haven't found a Lama that I would be comfortable with. But, you know, they have their own system of giving empowerments and their own system of explaining what is necessary and what is not. They have their own rules and regulations. So that is good to remember, that these regulations, I personally as a teacher, I don't follow a whole bunch of rules and regulations and rules what they have. Doesn't mean that I don't have any rules, but you understand what I mean. So, you know, they talk about these 4 different empowerments and I don't really look at it that way. I look at it in the 15-minute way rather than the 4 days way. And then you asked about the term direct introduction and pointing out the nature of mind. So to me, it's really the one and the same thing. You can use either one, either pointing out the nature of mind from nature of mind or Semyi. It's a Mahamudra tradition, Kagyu tradition term. They also, and direct pointing is a Nyingma tradition, Dzogchen tradition term. And in Nyingma tradition, they speak of Rigpa, which means knowing awareness or knowledge. An opposite of that is Ma Rigpa, which means ignorance. So Rigpa and Ma Rigpa, or Vidya and Avidya in Sanskrit. But in if we are technical or sectarian about it, then the Kagyu school doesn't really speak about Rigpa. They speak of Tamalgi Shepa. Tamalgi Shepa. But the meaning is the same, the experience is the same. I don't remember what Tamalgi Shepa means. I don't remember the exact translation, but they don't speak about Rigpa. They speak about Tamalgi Shepa, which probably means something like I don't know, natural state, nature of mind, something like this. But the experience is the same. And the way how nature of mind can be pointed out, or how we can be directly introduced to our Buddha nature is, a teacher or somebody who has it can talk people into it, and it kind of just reveals itself. Or it can be together or separately, like an energetic transmission. And yesterday and today I've done both of them combined, talking and then transmitting it. Then there's also a third way, which is like a symbolic way, indicating it symbolically, perhaps through a mudra or through a poem, through a dance or something like this, maybe waving a vajra in front of your face or something like this. I've also done this sometimes, but I just realized that I don't do it that much, but sometimes I do. Does this answer your question?
Very much so. Very much. Thank you very, very much. You just mentioned that Hung Pet also is a tool. I mean, the Zen to reveal the nature of mind. And I remember, like last year, you got an email of someone who opened 13 bhumis without receiving empowerment, without
yes.
guidance and anything. She awakened and then just went through all the bhumis. So it is possible without a formal teacher to get it pointed out to, or was there some transmission involved because she was watching the teachings of Pemaku?
That is an excellent point. That is an excellent question. I don't mean to criticize the Tibetan system, but I think it is better if the practitioners, the sooner they can empower themselves, the better. The sooner the Lama can be made, unemployed, the better. So this is what happened with, her name was Christine, I think, if I remember correctly, a Canadian lady who I don't remember if we did an guidance with her, guidance to awakening with her, or if she did it with some else, if it was with Carl or some other of our teachers, I forgot, or if she did it on her own, but she had woken up using the two-part formula, and then she took up some practices from What's Next, my second book. And I think that her main practice was doing dynamic concentration, shouting the syllables of Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, shouting the syllables of the three jewels. And she opened all bhumis, and I verified her that she had indeed opened all bhumis. I haven't heard of her since, I don't know how she's doing, but yes, she got to that point. And it's it is, if we think of, I don't know, and I have met maybe few thousand practitioners and maybe a couple of hundred different kinds of teachers in my life. But I've done, forgive me for my vulgar language, but shitloads of bhumi analysis. I've literally done maybe 5,000 of them. So based on that, what I know from my own experience, I can say that it is rare in the field of Buddhism or any other type of practice to open Mahasiddha bhumis. It is not common at all. and that is a very empowering experience, however you get there. And Christine's example tells us that, you know, you can do it completely without the involvement of a teacher, such as myself. And that is a huge, huge bonus and plus. Because, you know, that is I think that is solely a good thing. But at the same time, opening of bhumis, there is much, much more to spiritual practice than opening bhumis. You know, we have practitioners in our Sangha who have opened all of their bhumis in very short scope of time, but they still have a lot of laundry to a lot of cleaning up to do. So it gets easier if we think of, if I speculate on if somebody opens up all their bhumis and then starts to practice Vipassana on their own, yes, there will be progress, but I would recommend practicing tantric deities, some kind of tantric practice, because it makes the cleaning up much faster and easier. There is this, I remember this, it's in the blog, Namkhai Norbu Rinpoche, who passed away 1 or 2 years ago. In his book, he was, this is kind of a similar story to that empowerment story, but, you know, he went to a monastic college, and in there he learned all the ceremonial language and rituals and preparations and, you know, sand mandalas and all these kind of very elaborate forms of Dharma practice, very elaborate. And then, you know, he had graduated from that monastic college, and he went to, you know, he was a young man and young practitioner at that point. I don't know, a teenager perhaps, 17, 18, 19 years old. And, you know, he had that kind of understanding of Dharma, that it means to make sand mandalas with 50 different colors of sand, and it means to put the incense burning in this certain way, and, you know, then you read a sutra, you just get the pronunciation right, and superficial understanding of Dharma. And then, you know, somehow maybe he was recommended that he go and study with his uncle, who was said to be a great master of Ati Yoga, Dzogchen. The name of this uncle is Changchub Dorje. Changchub means bodhicitta in Tibetan. So his Dharma name was Bodhicitta Vajra in Sanskrit. Changchub Dorje. And so he went to study with this uncle, and I think he was staying with him for some time, and he never saw Changchub Dorje doing any ceremonies. And but nevertheless, he kept asking for some empowerment from him. And first he just said that no, I can't give it. And he kept asking a couple of times, no, I can't give it, can't give it. And then finally, Changchub Dorje had said that, okay, I will give it, fine. And it wasn't a big empowerment ceremony, not the one that lasts for days, But perhaps, it's told in the story that it was an empowerment that takes half a day, like 5-6 hours or something like this. And in empowerments they use bells and they use drums and they use all kinds of ceremonial instruments, and at some point the Lama is supposed to do this, and then the students do prostrations, and then the Lama does prostrations, and this whole orchestration of different things. But Changchuk Dorje, I think that he couldn't even read well. He was a simple person, simple man, living somewhere in the wilderness, pretty much by himself, just growing vegetables for himself, and having a yak or two, drinking yak tea there in his hut or something. And so he was pretty much illiterate, but he could read some. So the day of empowerment comes, and they have this in Tibet, they have these books in kind of in this shape. So they turn pages like this, not like this sideways, but up and down. So he's having the whole ritual there explained in a book, and they start, and Changchuk Dorje is kind of scratching his head, trying to figure out with his poor reading skills what is supposed to happen. And then he reads, now the Lama rings a bell, and he takes the bell and rings it for 5 minutes like an idiot. And then he reads the next sentence, oh, and there's supposed to be drum also. So then he hits the drum and then figures out, oh, it's the bell and drum at the same time, and does it again for 5 minutes like a complete fool. And the young Namkhai Norbu is looking at it like, what is going on here? And I think they finally make their way to the end of that empowerment by midnight. So they started early in the morning. It was supposed to last usually for a few hours, 5-6 hours, but then it lasted until midnight because Changchuk Dorje had no idea of all these rituals. But what Namkhai Norbu said in that text was that, when you asked something from Changchuk Dorje about the natural state or Dzogchen, he would pour it out like a river pours out water, completely from his own experience, just, perfect. That's a beautiful story. You can learn a little bit in monastic college, but perhaps not all.
Yeah. First, I think this Lama, I think he attained rainbow body. I think it's in the blog.
Yes.
Yeah. Second, I've been curious, like, just basically like what is meant with an empowerment, because I read like passages from Padmasambhava where he says what you're saying, like it's at some point through realization you have empowered yourself and so forth. I think Dzogchen Rinpoche says in one of his videos, like there are different stages of Mahamudra and different stages of Dzogchen, and they would be called either stages, but sometimes they sound like they are used, they talk about the stages as if they are empowerment. So sometimes they seem to be stages that the teacher kind of points out and the student have realizations.
Yes.
And they will call it either stages or empowerments. And so they kind of blend in. But I'm just curious, like, could you explain because you also say when you take empowerments from a teacher, you get very you get connected to that teacher in a sense. And so kind of just in depth what you mean with empowerment, or what is meant by Lung, I know people experience them differently. Like you also said earlier, like someone have visions when the app happens, someone doesn't. I have no visions. Could you just say something about empowerments, what or Lung, what does it mean? What is it?
Some time ago, I think it was about 6 months ago, or last year anyway, I wrote a long blog text about this. And I can talk about it a little bit, but I wrote like a 10-page 10-page text on this. It's something like a transmission heart of all Buddhism, something like this in the blog. And I wrote it because there was some confusion in, there was the Rigpa organization scandal, and some of Sogyal Rinpoche's students were kind of confused what they had received from this Lama who turned out to be ethically very questionable and unreliable. So I wrote that kind of as a reply for people who were thinking about it. So empowerment. Empowerments can be very, very different. There are all kinds of tantric traditions that all have some kinds of empowerments. And perhaps I would, in this reply of mine, I would only speak of empowerments in the context of Tantra, not so much Sutra or no Sutra, just Tantra and Dzogchen. So empowerment always means the core meaning of it, whatever the form of the empowerment is, whether it's a ritualistic empowerment in Buddhism or whether it is devoid of rituals or ceremonies. The meaning always is for the practitioner or the student to know him or herself as a wakeful being. And as you know, common to all tantric paths is the practice of Guru Yoga. Like I say, any Mahasiddha can be approached without empowerment. They are literally hanging on, their presence is hanging in the air, so you can just grab it and get the benefits of it. And the benefit of it is knowing ourselves, knowing ourselves as Buddhas, as wakeful beings. But on the other hand, if commonly also for Guru Yoga empowerments are given, but it is not necessary, in my view. Same can be said of some deities like Avalokiteshvara, Chenrezig, or Manjushri, Amitabha, a couple of other Buddhas. They don't require empowerment. But when it comes to wrathful deities, then you do need it to get the frequency right. And this of course, and what I mean with getting the frequency right is that, you know, wrathful deities, wrathful energies that address some strong emotions, some very sticky samsaric mind states in our psyche, it gets kind of more serious at that point, because it has to be, the frequency has to be correct. If it's incorrect, it can cause more problems. And this is like in let's say some energy practices or some forms of shamanism or something like this, some spirit work, they don't have a Mahasiddha to start the whole teaching, to transmit the teaching, and to back it up. So they actually get problems from dealing with their deep mind, their dark bits of their psyche. So, but when there is a Mahasiddha like Padmasambhava, who is our main guru, to first of all to transmit it to myself, and myself transmitting it to you, there's a Mahasiddha to back it up, like there is in all Buddhist tantric lineages. Every single one of them has a Mahasiddha as the founder, as the originator of some teachings and transmissions. So in the case of wrathful deities, you know, they are used to they enable us to see through these dark emotions, dark bits of our psyche. And that is, again, the purpose of that is the same, knowing ourselves. It helps us, it empowers us to know ourselves as wakeful beings. So I guess that's what I could say about tantric empowerments. And then there's the Dzogchen empowerment, which is actually not that easy to, you know, everybody can feel something, but whether, and this was the point I made in that long blog text, that everybody can feel some energy, get some sensation, but whether you actually recognize Buddha nature in a way that it's, let's say, mostly correct, that it has clarity and a lot of subtlety, that is the question. So when somebody, some Dzogchen Lama gives direct introduction, or in other words, points out the nature of mind, you know, everybody can get some benefit from it. But as you progress on your path, in our path, meaning that as you open the bhumis, you get to the Mahasiddha bhumis, and then you start perfecting them one by one, around the perfection of sixth bhumi, then you start understanding that, oh, there is so much like fineness to Rigpa. There is so much, you know, maybe you perceived like, if we think in terms of colors, maybe you perceived, you know, you perceive this transparent, clear awareness. And then at some point you start perceiving it in 5 main lights. Let's say in simple terms, like blue, red, green, yellow, white. Just 5 plain colors. But at some point you realize that, oh, this rainbow is actually endless array of colors. There's millions of those shades, not just 5, not just transparent. Then you start understanding at that point of your practice, you start to understand what that Buddha nature really is, that it's extremely rich. Extremely rich. And this is the immense gift of Dzogchen pointing out, of Dzogchen transmission. But it depends so much on the student and his or her stage, how you see it, how do you understand it. And it has a very big role. Like, you look at any Mahayana Buddhist teacher or Vajrayana teacher, and they speak so much about bodhicitta. They speak about this concern and compassion for all sentient beings all the time. And that's a pointer right there. That's a clue. If this bodhisattva vow is not there, then you will never get to that richness. You will never get to that array of million colors. I can guarantee that. But with bodhisattva vow, with bodhicitta, it comes. It's a game changer. From childish plays of Dharma to mature play of Dharma. Not only thinking about my benefit, but thinking about others. And that's a kind of a rebellious thing to do, because samsara means that people are concerned about their own stuff. They are staring at their own navel. So it's kind of a rebellious thing to start swimming against the stream and start being concerned of others, and actually taking the suffering of all sentient beings, even the stupid ones, to our heart. Their existential confusion, taking it into our hearts, welcoming it. Take refuge in my heart.
Kim, on that point, my aunt is in hospital with the coronavirus at the moment, and she's very sick. So I just wondered if we could maybe just give her a thought during this retreat.
Of course. What is her name?
Paula.
Paula.
Yeah.
And also, I was meaning to continue that all Mahayana Buddhist teachers, they constantly talk about bodhicitta. And Vajrayana practitioners constantly talk not only of bodhicitta, but also about their guru. Because guru is the one who makes it all possible through transmission. Those two. If you remember those two and apply those two, then you will certainly get to that richness. Certainly. I can guarantee that as well.
Thank you so much, Kim, for what you just explained, because it's a very subtle form of arrogance. I just noticed again that we have this blessing of these teachings, we have this blessing of the Sangha, and you can progress so smoothly, and you don't get hung up where you can so easily get hung up if you do it yourself, where you maybe don't see that you're in confusion, and you just kind of pronounce an end point at this place. And then when you progressed to a certain level, you think, well, I could have done that myself. And you just don't realize that that all the factors were in place which made this such a smooth, flowy ride so far. And then just I'm really touched by what you just said. And
there is a reason why there are 3 jewels in Buddhism: Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. And in Tantra, well, in our way of Tantra, it's Guru, Pure Land, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. There's a reason for that. And there's a reason for taking refuge. Refuge means, it means a safe place, right? It means a place where you can be existentially safe. Whether you live in this body or if you die and, your transmigration continues, refuge makes you safe, keeps you safe. I was just talking about bodhicitta and about the importance of a guru. I can certainly testify for both of them. Some people might take this really, I don't mean this in any bad way, but I used to practice in Sutric Buddhism, in Zen. I started with Zen, and it's a I kind of lost my thought there. I don't remember what I was supposed to say, but I'm glad I didn't say it. But but I wouldn't know, I have never read books. I have bought books, like I have 2,000 Dharma books over on the other side of that wall. I have bought books for our future center for years and years, but I never read them. Not because I don't want to read them, but because it just comes that way for me personally. I certainly recommend my students and our Sangha members to educate yourselves about Dharma. If you like reading books, read and listen to different teachers. But personally, I just never, for some reason, I buy a book collection of Dudjom Lingpa, for example, but for some reason I pretty much never come to even open those books. I rather, use that time for being in connection, in a living connection with Guru Rinpoche. Because he transmits it. Every time I call for him, every time I think of him, does the trick. In a way, Guru is like a, we all were raised by our mothers, and we were all breastfed by our mothers. So we got direct nourishment from the tit of our mother. It's exactly the same thing with a tantric guru. And it's the best nourishment you can have for a baby, breast milk. A guru, any Mahasiddha, transmits the best dharmic nourishment every time you ask. That's their job, that's their position, that's their role in this whole existence. That's their sole purpose. Sometimes people think that, oh, I don't want to bother Guru Rinpoche. I don't want to bother him with my problems. He's a master in that. He's a specialist in that. Unfortunately, there is no like a tariff, like a taximeter going on when you turn to him. There is a taximeter for me, but but not for him. So his gifts are endless. In this life, in previous lives, next life, next lives. Let's sit silently for 3-4 minutes, and then Carl, if you could lead basic prayers.
I take refuge in the Guru. I take refuge in his pure land. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I take refuge in the Guru. I take refuge in his pure land. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I take refuge in the Guru. I take refuge in his pure land. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I am the Guru. I'm in the Pure Land. I am the Buddha. I am the Dharma. I am the Sangha. I am the Guru. I'm in the Pure Land. I am the Buddha. I am the Dharma. I am the Sangha. I am the Guru. I'm in the Pure Land. I am the Buddha. I am the Dharma. I am the Sangha. May all beings be free. 3 times. Inhalation. May all beings be free. May all beings be free. May all beings be free. All beings. Inhale. All beings are free. All beings are free. All beings are free. And dedication of merit. Inhale. May all beings receive my accumulated merit. I dedicate the merit to the refuge and to all sentient beings. Palms together.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Let's continue tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.